Is there any of the 31 Tory cabinet ministers that you look at and you think, actually, I think you've got the right intentions, you're doing a good job?
That's a hard one.
Right, well, we've got a question on conservatism here from Frederick in Hastings, who says, Kemi Badenoch is now the most popular cabinet minister among Tory supporters, and even Suella Braverman is the 9th most popular from the list of 31. I'll just let that sink in for a moment. Does this show the Tories are inevitably going back to true conservatism once Sunak is shown the door by the public? Now, that's the Conservative Home poll of Conservative Party members. Rishi Sunak has a negative rating, which is quite something for a leader to be in the negative territory, while Penny Mordaunt and James Cleverly are the 2nd and 3rd most popular. Danny?
Well, I think we do need an authentic conservatism. I think the challenge is a legitimate one. I want to have it before the election, not after. And I think that a lot of what Rishi stands for is right. He's actually socially conservative, more than we've had in recent years from our leaders. I think he believes he was a Brexiteer, and he wants to restore the sort of the culture of our country. And I think he's fighting well on a whole bunch of fronts. I think we do, though, need to recognise that the country hasn't yet had what it voted for in 2019, which was a fundamental reset of the power relations in our country. They voted to take back control, not just from Brussels, but from London and from the political establishment. And I don't think we've yet delivered that. They voted for a reset in our economy to level up the country, to get all parts of the country to generate opportunity for young people. And there's good reasons why we haven't been able to do that in the last few years. Other things have happened. It's also quite a short period to do it in, but I think we need to demonstrate change in those directions. And fundamentally, in order to win the election, we need to repeat the trick that Boris pulled off, which was to connect traditional places like mine in Wiltshire, traditional Tory base, with those voters in the north and the Midlands and elsewhere who have small c conservative instincts, patriotic people, family-minded, community-minded people, and he recognised in Boris somebody who was going to deliver change. Unfortunately, he didn't. And I think as a party we've let the country down, and we need to restore their trust in us by delivering and setting a really strong course of change of direction over the next year.
And if you were voting in that poll, which cabinet minister would you vote as your
Well, I voted.
performer?
You mentioned Kemi and Suella. I voted for both of them in the last leadership election.
Did you?
So, but listen, we're not. And
You quite surprised me by that, actually.
do I, Ian?
Yeah.
Who would you put me down?
I would have thought you would have voted for somebody, how can I put this charitably, more thoughtful.
I think they're both very thoughtful, and Ian, more profoundly, listen. All of the candidates, all good in their different ways. I think what we saw from both of those was candidates who would speak for the values and the interests of the British people, and particularly those people who put us into power in 2019. Something profound happened in 2016 and then again in 2019. Politics changed absolutely in this country. It's a recognition of long-term changes, but that was the political moment, and we need to deliver on that change.
Can I just challenge Danny on something? You talk about take back control, and these are the values of the British people. I want to know how, years after the Brexit vote, what we mean by take back control, and why has it been so difficult to take back control?
Well, it's been difficult because I think we went about it in the wrong way in 2016.
But what does it actually mean? I never knew what it meant.
I'm sorry that you struggled to understand what it meant.
Well, I think most people do.
Well, I'm not sure they did, actually. I think people instinctively knew what they were talking about. It was about restoring sovereignty over our borders, our laws, our money.
Which we had.
From Brussels. Well, we can refight that battle, if you like. I think we'll always win it, frankly, because if you ask people, do you want to be controlled by a government based in another country, which you do not elect and which takes decisions behind closed doors that you have no power over?
We have in this country as well.
Yes, but we have something of a democracy.
We have the House of Lords as well.
Okay, so
we're not the government.
We could obviously do more.
I suppose it's a wider question, because you talked very passionately about the book, The Covenant, and I agree with you about community and strengthening communities. I'm just still curious as to, is confidence in the Tory party going down because people have not been able to deliver on Brexit? Or is it simply because actually people want a different kind of vision for what community looks like, what a nation looks like, and all the kind of sound bites of take back control, etc., really couldn't be delivered because it is very difficult to deliver on those promises.
It is. And I think, the conversation earlier about, it sounds technical and secondary, but this business about the local government finance and concrete, fundamentally who's making decisions in our country? The Grenfell disaster was because the power that community had, well, they didn't have the power, did they? Decisions were being made remotely behind closed doors in ways that disenfranchised the community. That's the outrage of so many things that go wrong in our country, large and small. And what people really want is agency. They want a sense that they can control the circumstances of their lives, locally and nationally. So Brexit was a great cry genuinely for control, but I think it was about community, and it was about having a sense of our nation as not just being some part of some sort of amorphous global, partnership, but being something distinct and something real that people can have attachment to. And that's what our voters stand for and our voters want. That's what they voted for in 2019. Starmer's offering just a reheat of Blairism, of kind of vague internationalisms and progressive values and, some sort of sound bites about fairness. Actually, what people want, I think, is meaning and the opportunity to contribute and to be part of a proper community.
Jeremy.
Well, we have a country with 500,000 children living in desperate poverty in primary schools. We have housing waiting lists like you've never seen before.
You're being Mr. Misery Guts again.
Yeah, I'm being Mr. Misery Guts because that is the reality of many people's lives. And young people who go to university left with massive debts which hang around their necks for decades and decades to come. And so what hope are we actually offering to the young generation? And that's the whole point.
Can I steer you back to the question, though?
Yeah, you can. What was the question?
Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman, they're very popular among Conservative Party members. Does that mean the Tories are inevitably going back to true conservatism once Sunak is shown the door?
Well, I'm not rightly sure what true conservatism is, unless it's sharp elbows Margaret Thatcher style, which led to huge differences of living standards and income in our society and a fundamental philosophical change. I mean, Thatcher was very clever, for sure. I think her legacy is terrible. But, there has to be political alternatives. And if the Conservative Party is to go in that direction of individualism rather than community, which I'm not quite sure Danny would actually go along with that, then surely it is up to the Labour Party to move much more in the humanitarian direction of saying, well, the buy-in here is we will have a National Health Service free at the point of need. We will have social care available for all, again, free at the point of need, and we'll have an education service where we don't penalise young people for wanting to study. I mean, it's ludicrous, the debts we're imposing on those people.
Introduced and a housing by system, the Labour Party, which you supported at the time.
I must say, I'm sure you've checked this out, I have never voted for student fees at any time. I voted against...
No, I meant you supported the Labour Party, not that particular policy.
Of course, but I said at the time, when the whips came to me at that time and said, it's only £1,000 a year, nobody's going to notice it. I said, you're crossing a Rubicon here. You're crossing a Rubicon, don't do it. Because once you've taken away the principle of free education from which we all benefit, if a young person becomes a doctor, we all benefit because of that. If they can't afford to become a doctor, we don't have a doctor.
Is there any of the 31 Tory cabinet ministers that you look at and you think, actually, I think you've got the right intentions, you're doing a good job?
That's a hard one. I mean, not really, but I have quite interesting conversations with quite a lot of them at various times, sometimes about individual issues. I'm going to talk to Michael Gove about the endless problems of cladding, and he gives me wonderful, very warm words answers. They're brilliant, and he's great at the warm words answers. The problem is, it don't deliver a policy.
Well, maybe Angela Rayner can bring that about for you now that she's shadowing him.
Well, I will talk to Angela about the whole issue of... this issue of cladding on private sector developments...
Let's not get started on that, because we're running out of time. We haven't heard from Sarah yet.
I'm not surprised that that's the outcome of the Conservative home poll at all. But, it is a broad church in the Conservative Party. And certainly, what Danny's doing with the New Conservatives and putting forward what he thinks, I respect hugely. But I kind of would rather that you wait until after the election before we start fracturing the Conservative Party more. Because I think there will be, if the general election goes as we expect, there will be a time of renewal within the party, because there will be a huge loss of talent from the benches. There will be new ideas coming in. There will be new leaders. And I think, it will be a little bit like it was kind of post-97, where...
They need a new generation, Sarah. Yeah. You should be part of it.
You're all right. No, thank you.
So, of the 31 Conservative cabinet ministers, which do you look at? You think, you are performing well?
Alex Chalk. He would be my number one.
Well, he was the one that went out to defend Lee Anderson's F off back to France comments, of course.
I think Alex Chalk is a really, really impressive person and impressive politician. And then I would also put Penny Mordaunt and James Cleverly. They would be on my list.